Hey everyone, and welcome back to the AI Tech channel. Are you ready for a potential tech war escalation? Because today, we're diving deep into Senator Tom Cotton's new bill that could fundamentally change how we export advanced semiconductors. I'm talking about the kind of chips that power AI, data centers, and even military applications. The question is this a smart move to protect our technology, or will it backfire and hurt American innovation? Stick around, because we're about to unpack this complex issue. You might be surprised by what we uncover. Okay, let's get down to the news. Senator Tom Cotton, a leading Republican voice on national security, is pushing for stricter tracking of advanced semiconductors. His proposed bill would require exporters to notify the U.S. government if they suspect their chips are being diverted or tampered with. This is all part of a broader effort to prevent China and other adversaries from getting their hands on cutting-edge technology, especially those high-performance chips made by companies like NVIDIA. Remember that the Trump administration already started tightening export controls on these chips, and this bill seems to be taking that a step further. It's a big deal because these chips are essential for developing advanced AI, and controlling their flow is seen as crucial for maintaining a technological edge. But is it enough? And what are the potential downsides? Now, let's analyze what's really going on here. At its core, this is about strategic competition with China. The U.S. is worried that China's rapid advancements in AI, driven by access to these advanced chips, could pose a threat to American economic and military dominance. Think about it. AI is transforming everything from autonomous weapons to surveillance systems. Control over the underlying technology is paramount. Senator Cotton's bill is a direct response to that concern. But here's the thing. Export controls are a double-edged sword. On one hand, they can slow down China's progress. On the other hand, they can hurt American companies that rely on sales to the Chinese market. NVIDIA, for example, has already had to modify its chip designs to comply with U.S. regulations. This is impacting their bottom line. Furthermore, restricting access to U.S. technology could incentivize China to develop its own domestic semiconductor industry, potentially leading to even greater competition in the long run. We're talking about a potential shift in the global semiconductor landscape. Is that a risk worth taking? The technology at the heart of this is really cutting edge. We're talking about chips using extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, to create incredibly small transistors. These chips are faster, more energy efficient, and capable of handling much more complex calculations. They're the brains behind the most powerful AI systems. Another key technology is high bandwidth memory, or HBM, which allows these chips to access data much faster. This is crucial for training large AI models. And finally, we have chiplet technology, which involves combining multiple smaller chips into a single package. This allows for greater flexibility and customization. All these technologies are at the forefront of semiconductor innovation, and controlling their export is a top priority for the U.S. government. There was a paper published in Nature Nanotechnology last year that explored the limits of transistor scaling and the potential for new materials to overcome these limitations. It's a fascinating read if you want to dive deeper into the technical challenges of building these advanced chips. So, here's where things get really interesting and potentially controversial. On one side, you have national security hawks who argue that any risk of China acquiring these chips is unacceptable. They believe that the potential military and economic consequences of allowing China to surpass the U.S. in AI are too great to ignore. Their argument is simple: better safe than sorry. On the other side, you have economists and business leaders who warn about the economic costs of decoupling from China. They argue that restricting exports will hurt American companies, stifle innovation, and ultimately weaken the U.S. economy. They point to the fact that China is a huge market for semiconductors, and losing access to that market would be a major blow. They also argue that China will eventually develop its own domestic capabilities anyway, so the export controls are just delaying the inevitable. So who's right? Well, there's no easy answer. One way to approach this is to look at historical data. Has export control ever been effective in the past? Studies have shown that it can be effective in slowing down the development of certain technologies, but it rarely stops it completely. Another approach is to assess the technological capabilities of China's semiconductor industry. How close are they to catching up with the U.S.? Experts disagree on this, but most believe that they are still several years behind. Finally, we need to consider the potential for unintended consequences. Could export controls trigger a trade war? Could they alienate our allies? These are all important questions that need to be considered. We need to find a balance between protecting our national security and maintaining our economic competitiveness. It's a tough challenge, but it's one that we need to address head-on. Now think about quantum computing, which will be the next major leap in computing. How will governments regulate this emerging field? Now, let's switch gears and talk about something completely different: Medicaid. This might seem unrelated to semiconductors, but it highlights a similar debate about government spending and priorities. You see, while the U.S. is considering spending more money on export controls, it's also considering cutting spending on Medicaid, the health insurance program for low-income Americans. Many Republicans argue that Medicaid is inefficient and doesn't always improve people's health. They point to studies like the Oregon Medicaid experiment, which found limited impact on physical health outcomes. They also argue that states have too much incentive to grow their Medicaid programs because the federal government pays for a large share of the costs. They claim that some people on Medicaid could afford private insurance, and that the program is simply too expensive. But on the other side, you have Democrats and healthcare advocates who argue that Medicaid is essential for providing healthcare to vulnerable populations. They point to studies that show Medicaid can save lives and improve access to care. They also argue that cutting Medicaid would disproportionately harm low-income families, children, and people with disabilities. So, just like with export controls, there's a fundamental disagreement about the role of government and the best way to allocate resources. Should we prioritize national security or healthcare? Economic growth or social safety nets? These are tough choices that policymakers have to make. But the key is to have an informed debate based on facts and evidence, and to consider the potential consequences of our decisions. A key issue is the efficiency of Medicaid spending. Some conservatives argue that states have little incentive to control costs because the federal government pays for a large share of the expenses. They propose reforms like block grants, which would give states a fixed amount of federal funding each year and would allow them to have more flexibility in how they spend the money. But critics argue that block grants could lead to cuts in services and reduced access to care. Another issue is the role of provider taxes. These taxes allow states to raise revenue from hospitals and nursing homes, and then use that money to fund Medicaid services. The federal government then matches those funds, effectively giving states more money to spend on healthcare. Conservatives argue that provider taxes are a form of money laundering, and that they allow states to spend more money without being held accountable. But supporters argue that provider taxes are a valuable tool for states to fund their Medicaid programs, especially during economic downturns. The debate over Medicaid is complex and multifaceted, with no easy answers. But it's a crucial debate that will shape the future of healthcare in America. All right, let's bring it all together. Senator Cotton's bill highlights the growing tension between national security and economic interests in the tech sector. The U.S. is determined to maintain its technological edge, especially in AI, but it's also wary of the potential economic costs of decoupling from China. The future of the semiconductor industry hangs in the balance. Will the U.S. succeed in containing China's rise, or will China emerge as a dominant force in the global tech landscape? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. This is a story that we'll be following closely here on the AI Tech channel. So what do you think? Is Senator Cotton's bill a smart move, or will it backfire? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of the latest AI and tech news. Plus, hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Remember to stay informed and think critically about the technology that's shaping our world. This is just the beginning of a long and complex story. The decisions that are made in the coming months and years will have a profound impact on the future of technology and on the future of the global economy. So, stay tuned, because we'll be here to break it all down for you. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and colleagues. The more people who are informed about these issues, the better. Together, we can have a more informed and productive debate about the future of technology. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning.